I'd like to continue on the previous discussion of the whole self. In the previous segment, I talked about how the whole self is comprised of our mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual components. In this segment, I want to focus on the core self, and that's that intersection, that coming together of these aspects of ourselves. It's a subset of the whole self. In essence, I just want to peel back another layer and look at the influence and interaction of these four components and what's in the core self. I see two main components there. One is our personal essence, or what we refer to as our ego. And on the other hand, there's the spiritual essence, or what we refer to as our spirit. Our ego, or personal essence, is our sense of self. It's our self-image. It's comprised of our self-worth, or perceived value, and that can be based on outer factors or inner ones, and I'll say more later. And then it's also comprised of our will, our choices that we make, and the effort that we put into carrying them out. Our self-worth is how valuable we view ourselves. What do we base our sense of value on? On the one hand, we can do it based on our traits, what we look like, what we sound like, our possessions, what we own, what we've accomplished, our social status, our economic status, our educational attainment. All of these things are outer focused. I refer to them as self-esteem. On the other hand, we can have our sense of value based on the fact that we exist. We're here. We have been allowed to be on planet Earth for some reason. That in and of itself is reason enough to believe that we are worth something, we are valuable. And that's more an inner focus, and I refer to that as the intrinsic worth or value. These two aspects, the self-esteem and the intrinsic worth, influence each other. The relationship among them determines our self-worth. It could be that the two of them combine together and amplify each other. It could be one cancels out the other. There's a lot of different ways in which they can combine together. And in conjunction with our will, our perceived value influences what's possible for us, the quality of our reality. And it's not just based on ourselves, it's based on external factors, other people's wills, divine will. When we look at self-esteem or having a sense of value based on external things, and intrinsic worth or having a sense of value based on just being and existing, the relationship between the two of them creates different types of realities. For example, if we have very low self-esteem or intrinsic worth, or both together, we tend to not feel good about ourselves. We may not feel like we have a lot of power or control. We may be less likely to step out and not have as much confidence, be unwilling to take risks or go for what we want to create in our lives. That can lead to depression or despair or just feeling a sense of hopelessness. I remember and recall when I was working as a professor at the University of Washington. Because of the competition, because of how difficult it was to, for instance, get a paper published, because there's a lot of external factors that play into that. Sometimes I didn't have the confidence to actually submit a paper to the more competitive sources because I didn't think it would get in, and I wanted to play it safe. I didn't want to deal with that rejection. That's an example of how low self-esteem or low intrinsic worth can influence how we go about our activities. On the other hand, if we have very high self-esteem, it can lead to a range of arrogance. For instance, if we have low intrinsic worth, we may be very egocentric. Or if we have high intrinsic worth to go with that high self-esteem, it can lead to a sense of entitlement, where we think just because we exist, we are entitled to everything, and we have that external validation, we have all these things. But the thing about it is we don't always have control over that. Things happen. An earthquake could happen. We lose it all. Then what? And we've seen plenty of examples of this, of how people who are on the top. They have it all. And everything comes crashing down for them. That's why that area of high self-esteem is not an ideal place to be. What you want is to have a sense of balance, adequate self-esteem, and adequate intrinsic worth, where you can do what it is you need to do, feel good about yourself regardless of the outcome. You know that regardless of whether you fail or get rejected or criticized, that you're not looking for that external validation. You feel good because you did that, because you stepped out. You feel able to step out because you know just because you're here, you don't question whether or not you're valuable. You know the fact that you are here in and of itself means that there's some value that you bring to the table of life. I've experienced that a lot in my business. I've been working to build it for a couple years. Where it is right now is not where I want to be. I have this vision, but it takes time to get there. In the meantime, nothing may be happening. What am I going to do? Am I going to start discrediting myself because it's not doing that? And people are criticizing me because they don't know where I'm going with this. I have to be okay with where I am, and I am okay with where I am, and accept that when I am able to get to where I want things to be, at least further enough where people can understand where I'm going, whether they accept that or reject that is okay. I'm okay just knowing that I'm doing what I feel I'm here to do. I don't necessarily need that external validation, although the idea is eventually for other people who can benefit from my work or having that benefit, and then I get some of that external input as well to continue moving forward in my work. That lack of balance creates fragmentation, or a fragmented self, where when you are out of touch at the core, not aligned, not balanced at the core, it can erode your confidence, it can erode your will. So you may have low will or no will, may seem to give up. Our sense of self, our ego, is influenced by our self-worth, the combination of our self-esteem and our intrinsic worth, and it's influenced by our will or our personal essence. The divine essence, which is the other part of our core self, we can think of it as our spirit. We can think of it as the spark that runs through us, that enables us to exist, that enables us to breathe, think, love, move, and everything else that we do. Where does the core self exist? Where does it live within us? Now, my response is not scientific. I imagine it existing at the center of our being, at the intersection of all four parts of us, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Perhaps it's centered around our third chakra in the middle of our chest, the solar plexus area. I talked about the chakras in the last segment. It's part of our spiritual body. It's an energetic center. The point I want to make here is that our core self is not just in our mind. It's an energy center that runs throughout all levels of our being. The ego has a mental component in that there's a pattern of thinking that is involved with the ego, but there's also a pattern of what we do with our body. There's a pattern of how we feel. There's a pattern of our own energy. It's the intersection of all aspects of our being. Are you someone who accomplishes great things, but you struggle to feel good about yourself? Or do you know someone like this? Spend time at Melody-Ivory.com, the place to make your life sing.